So one thing that people forget about when we're talking about the New Year's celebration that's going to be coming in just a few days, really, it's going to be like 4 or 5 days from the time this video comes up. People forget because, we have the GSSR coming, that we actually have a pretty decent summoning campaign coming for the New Year's anniversary. So I kind of wanted to go ahead and talk about that and shed some light on this just to make sure that, people either maybe didn't do a GSSR for one of these servants when they could just try to summon for them here, right? Because do notice that the GSSR here goes up to the 10th, whereas the summoning campaign goes up to the 15th, and I believe every servant should have hit right up by the time, well, except for Gilgamesh. Yeah, never mind. Sorry, I was getting a little messed up by the dates over here, because I was like, no, I've checked this before. I think every servant goes up on rate up before it changes, right? But then I thought it was going this way, right? Not vertically. So that's just me being stupid. But yeah, every servant should come out before the lucky bag goes away. So you have a chance to try to see, maybe you've got even 30 Saint Quartz, right? And you really want Shi Huang. So if you can even just try to get him on that, and then you can just pull on a completely different GSSR, I would highly advise you do that, right? If any of these servants are people that you might be summoning for on a specific GSSR for, and if you were to get, say, someone like Gilgamesh, that you would completely change, because let's say you have Super Orion, but you're like, oh, I also want Gilgamesh. Then let's say you get Gilgamesh, and you're like, I don't really want anybody else here. Maybe you already have John Archer. Maybe you already have Squirtoria, right? And then you're like, you know what? This now opens me up to summon for Berserker, right? And then maybe you get Arjuna Altar, right? It's just giving yourself the best odds possible. So I kind of wanted to talk about this today and whether or not any of these servants were worth just kind of going out of your way to summon on. But as you guys know, your boy is on that daily FGO content grind, and all that I would really just like in return is a like on the video and a subscribe to the channel. All my links are down in the description down below, so if you want to support the channel for free, I'm affiliated by all means with LD Emulator and Loot Cakes. Those are both free things you can do to support the channel. And to answer some basic questions, or just the most basic main question, no, you are not going to get your account banned if you play on an emulator. FGO is pretty chill and relaxed when it comes to playing on emulators. They're not like Brave Souls or Dragon Ball Legends, who I know are a bit more antsy about you playing on an emulator. And then also, I stream every weekday on my Twitch, which I am almost done with my vacation, which, is a little sad for me, but good for people that are on, the Twitch grind that like coming out to the streams, because that means streams are going to be back on the weekdays. So that's also a thing. And, it's not that bad for me because, I enjoy hanging out with you guys on the stream. So I'd love to see more of you guys come out there on the stream. So weekdays. And then, what is it? Finally, there's the join button. Sorry, I'm forgetting all of the shilling thing, man, because I had a 10-hour drive today, so I'm just completely fried. I'm just, completely gone. So I'm like, what are even my intros, man? What's all this stuff that I have? But yeah, join button, click it, channel member, blah, 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 extra free content. Who cares? Let's talk about the servants. Infinitely more interesting. Now, obviously, I'll probably have videos coming out for each of these servants, that should drop on the day that each of them come out. So the Yang video will either come out the day before or the day of her banner. I like to do the day before, that way you at least have a little bit of planning time to be like, okay, here's how good she is. Should I summon for her tomorrow? That gives you some time to think about it, right? So I try to do at least the day before, if not the day of. So I'll obviously be talking about them in more detail when they do come out. But I mean, suffice to say, this is a really strong New Year's banner. If there was just a servant that you wanted to target, it would probably be Shi Huang, because this is the best soloing servant in the game. I don't want to hear it. This is just the guy when it comes to soloing. Not to put down anybody like Ku Alter or, Old Man on the Mountain, not to put them down. It's just Shi Huang is absolutely broken in everything he does. He just, from the battery to being able to loop his invincibility NP to the being able to do good crit damage to the reducing NP, he just does everything, the stun, the attack buff. There's just not much he doesn't do that's needed for a good solo servant. And he's a ruler, which in this case helps him out a lot, because it means 90% of the classes can't do jack diddly squat to him, right? So he's just an insanely powerful servant to go for, and one of the few servants that honestly you could keep him at NP1, because he's a solo servant and he has a non-damaging NP and his NP1 effects are good enough as is. You really don't need to go for higher NP copies, and that's kind of just where, the whales and the free-to-plays can be equal with this guy. They can just get him at NP1, get him at a higher NP copy, he's just going to be good. So he's one that I would definitely have people go target. Saber Shiki, unless you just really like Saber Shiki, I wouldn't advise going for her. If you like Shiki and you're like, man, I really got to get Shiki, just might as well just test your luck on the Saber banner, because then at the very least you have a shot at getting Okita, Astolfo, Nero Bright, who's going to be insanely good. Nero Bright is basically going to be like a safety net if you don't get Castoria. So having her as a potential get if you just really want Saber Shiki's not bad. Musashi's not bad. Any Enma's pretty good. Really, the only dud here is Sigurd, because even after Arthur gets his buff, he'll be pretty solid as well. So if you want Shiki, I just recommend you don't waste your Saint Quartz on trying to summon for her, because she's not bad. It's just that she's not really going to bring up the strength of your account. Like, she'll be fine. You can get some use out of her, but, you know, she's not going to be like, oh, now I can do this crazy quest way easier now. Like, she's good for certain challenge quests where she can kind of like wave clear and insta-kill people, but outside of stuff like that, I mean, she's just kind of alright to use. Gilgamesh is just very, very good. He's basically like one of the most generically good servants in the game. I use that term a lot, and people think that I'm saying that like, oh, the servant's bad because they're generically good, but that's not what that means. Generic stuff is usually really good. Like, a generic buff would just be like, oh, he just gets big attack buff. That's generic, super simple, very strong, right? It's nothing super complex where it's like, well, you could get like 50% attack, but you have to attack them once, then take an attack, then you get 5.6%. Like, it's nothing weird like that, right? It's not reliant on anything. Like, everything Gilgamesh does is pretty much free. Even his special damage mod applies to pretty much every servant except like 4 of them or something like that. So like, he's just generically a very good beat stick for your account. He's solid. It's just, again, as much as I use Gilgamesh and as much as I just like to love on him and I love to use him, you're probably better off summoning for like someone like Chi Shi Huang, or even like Summer BB, or even like a second copy of Kiara, because until they give Gilgamesh like one more thing, he's not complete. He's just missing something, whether it be just like a 50% crit buff, or even like they wanted to give him like survivability, like they want to do something like, I don't know, like an invincibility using one of the shields that Nasu was talking about in one of the interviews. If you didn't know, Nasu in an interview was just like, yeah, Gilgamesh could probably beat Kojiro. He'd just pull out some random shield to block, you know, Swallow Reversal. So I guess he should have like solemn defense or something. Like, just give him something strong. So he's just shy of like one more buff before he becomes like a must summon, because his NP really carries him. Like, Gilgamesh is hard carried by his NP, because his NP, it's an AoE NP that hits like its single target, right? Like, that's kind of the meme, but that's his damage mod is just that good, right? He just gets like free big damage against all servants, and it just makes him generically good for a lot of situations. It's just like, would I tell people to go out of their way to summon for Gilgamesh when like Chi Shi Huang is here, or like Summer BB or Kiara is here? Probably not. Skyhawk's kind of in the same vein. Now, Skyhawk, if you don't have Scotty, there's 2 different versions of Skyhawk, really. You have Skyhawk with Scotty, with double Scotty, where she looks really strong, because Skyhawk's main weakness, if you want to pull out, if I'm just going to pull this up over here, is how her deck is built, right? They, for whatever reason, made the Buster card 6 hits and the Quick cards over here 2 hits, right? When they should have been swapped around. So the thing with Scotty is Scotty drastically helps Scotty with her NP refunding abilities, and that's her only weakness, right? Because if you look at Scotty's kit, like, this is fine, you know, when this gets buffed, it's even better, and then it's like, this is pretty good for the turn, but it kind of just means that, like, okay, Scotty's really good for one attack, and then she's kind of out of juice, because it's really hard for her to get an NP by herself. But if you have Scotty, Scotty doesn't care that you have a hard time getting your NP, because she's just going to force feed NP back into you, and she's going to help Skyhawk's damage be more consistent, because even though she loses the quick buff and she loses the attack damage mods here, she's at least getting the defense down that Scotty's providing, and she's getting 100% quick buff total from both Scotties. So she can still output some really good damage on turns 2 and 3, and it helps her out a lot. So if you have Scotty, Skyhawk's a really good servant to pick up, because she fixes all of her problems. If you don't have Scotty, she's really good for one turn of big damage, like if you need that. Like I was saying when I made the Lost Belt 5 guide, that you have those fights like Cerberus that have like 600k HP, and Skyhawk is really good for stuff like that, because even without her damage mod, she's still capable of just chunking massive amounts of damage. She is just a very high damaging servant, and even without Scotty, she's good for one turn of really good damage, which is still somewhat necessary, right? Like, it's not as common as it used to be in year 1, but it's still something you could bring out every now and then. And, you know, I'd be lying if I said that I don't appreciate having Skyhawk for situations like that, where I just need to just chunk somebody for like 350k damage, if not more, if they have the damage mod, and just like let it be done, right? Instead of having to deal with like, I don't know, like looping another servant's NP like 3 times. So like she's good for that. And if you have Scotty, she has immensely more value. But if you don't have Scotty, and then it's a bit more shaky as to whether or not you should summon for her or not, especially again when you have someone like Chi Huang and then Summer BB and Kiara here. Now, need to address those two. Summer BB, the reason I'm gassing her up is really just because of her third skill. If you don't know, her third skill basically locks your cards in rotation. So what that means is, if you're a newer player and you don't know what any of this means, I'll just explain it briefly. Basically, you know that each servant has this deck of cards, right? Like these are called their cards, right? You know, quick card, arts card, buster card, right? And this is Ska Hawk's deck, right? So you have 3 servants on the field, and they each have 5 each. So you have 15 cards in total, and once you use a card in a turn, it leaves rotation until all 15 cards have been, you know, quote unquote used in a turn, right? Like until they've all shown up. So that's why you don't see like the same card appearing over and over and over and over and over again. If you're wondering like why it was so random, that's kind of how the card shuffle. That's a very general, bare bones explanation of how the card rotation works. And why BB is so good is she locks her card rotation. So she takes out the RNG of what cards are going to get next. So like, if you get a really good setup where you're like, oh, I got Summer BB's both of her arts cards, I can lock that in rotation, fire her NP, and then just keep spamming the arts and keep getting crits and whatnot, and I can just have a really good, consistent, like 3-turn setup. It's really good for things like the tree fight in Lost Belt 4, because you can 3-turn that with Parvati, even though there's 2 enemies. You just need to make sure you get Parvati's like quick cards at the end so she can refund her NP and do big quick crit damage, right? But the problem is that it's RNG, right? You don't know if you're going to get those cards, but Summer BB says, I take out all of that RNG. So she's really good if you want to take out and like do these big 5-head strategies for FGO. If you don't care about those strategies, then probably don't bother, right? Because that's like her main drive. You can try to use her as like a farmer or whatever because she has a good battery, but it's just like, you're not getting the most use out of her. It's kind of like using Nero Bride as a DPS instead of using her as a support, because like, again, she truly shines as a support, and if you can use her as a DPS, that's fine. She'll do okay. It's just not the intended main use that, you know, you get the full power of the unit out of. And then Kiara, I mean, Kiara's kit is really broken. Like, Kiara's really strong. She's a really strong boss-killing servant, and I think it speaks to how strong she is because you guys know my takes on alter egos, that I think alter egos are better for weaker accounts, right? The stronger your account gets, the less valuable the alter ego class gets, because when you're newer and you get an alter ego, you're like, okay, I don't got to worry about leveling up like my Zerk, Rider, you know, Caster, Assassin, any of these guys, because I kind of have the all-in-one right here. But then as you start leveling up these other servants, you get servants that are more spec'd into the niches that a lot of the alter egos are specking into. Like, you get somebody better than Sitsanai as a single target art servant, you get somebody better than Melt as a single target quick servant, although that's a little more situational because Melt in and of herself is good. She's one of the rare, just really strong alter egos, but you guys get what I'm saying. Kiara, on the other hand, is just a servant that you would still use, right? Because even after you start getting other servants, Kiara just, she's just so good, right? Like, she's so good with everything she does. I mean, like, she's got the battery, like the NP, like, drain, like the Pierce invincibility and defense on NP. Like, her stuff is just crazy. Like, it's so nutty. Like, I'm using her in a lot of like the random pre-raid fights in JP right now for the Koyanskaya event. And so many of those fights are so annoying. Like, the bosses will be like, we apply like 2 dodges per turn and we give ourselves big defense. And Kiara says, I don't really care. Like, I'm just going to pierce all of that. And she has this like super good ability that she can't even be stopped by rulers. Like, she gets super effective mod against rulers as well. Super useful, right? It's just at NP1, she hits like a potato. So the meme with Kiara is very much true that you want to get her NP2. And so it's like, if you're not, if you're going to summon on this banner, like, let's clear that out. Like, I'm assuming you're going to summon. If you're going to summon on this banner, you know, if you already have a lot of these units and you don't care about them, you know, you can skip it. But if you're wanting to summon and you already got like Chi Huang, or for whatever reason you don't want Chi Huang, Kiara is probably the number 2 target to go for. And I would try to get her NP2. I would just dump everything you have into Kiara, because I think Kiara is absolutely insanely good. You just gotta get her to NP2, because she's usable at NP1, but you miss out on so many kills, or like the fight takes too long. And then Kiara eventually just ends up getting blasted because she was doing like 5,000 damage unironically. Like she was just smacking them like a wet paper towel and not really doing enough damage to kill the enemy. So, I mean, that's personally what I'm going to be doing. Like I'm going to be throwing probably as much Saints Quartz as I have at Kiara down here and just seeing if I can get her that NP2. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. I'm not commenting on Yang, by the way, until her video comes out, so that'll be a little something you guys can look forward to. But I think Yang's pretty solid. I mean, she's one of those servants that, like, her true worth didn't really come out until really difficult content came out. Like, you guys know that the Serranos fight from Lost Belt 6 is notoriously, like, really hard. Probably, if not just definitively, the most hard battle in the game as of right now. Let's see what we get in the Koyanskaya event. Maybe Koyanskaya just goes absolutely crazy and just flips us backwards and destroys everybody in the game. But, yeah, like, that fight is notoriously really hard. And I know, what's her name? Lady over here, Yang, has some of the easiest time being able to fight Serranos. Like, she's really good for that fight in particular, which is like one of the things that I say about those other servants that I praise a lot, that they get better the harder the fight is, right? If you check out some of the top 5 videos, there's a lot of servants that I praise because they're really good when the going gets really tough, right? And Yang is one of those servants. So look forward to that. I hope I kind of explained everything. I tried to go in a bit more detail for this one, so hopefully I was clear on a lot of that and you guys have a better idea of like what to expect for the New Year's banner. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace late, guys.